I don't have pyrotechnics, but hopefully I have something interesting to talk about. I'm going to talk about, do we have a slide back here? I'm going to talk about a little bit about a business transaction that's gotten quite a bit of notoriety and has actually garnered quite a substantial financial reward for the folks involved. And perhaps more importantly, at least to me and to my heart, I want to talk a little bit about public education and the work that I've done and work that I hope I can inspire some of you to do afterwards. I find it somewhat amusing, and I have spoken about the education piece before from time to time, that it's me up here, because I didn't actually bring the letter with me, but I remember the context quite well. And it was a letter that my parents got from my high school principal, and it said, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Schupak, I'm constrained but regret to inform you that your son, Donald, is the single worst student that I've ever had in my entire educational career. So fortunately, my citizenship has been in ascendancy ever since." Now, as Jim told you, the Spirits transaction is one that took place approximately 40 years ago. It involved the now distinct Spirits of St. Louis franchise in the American Basketball Association and the extinct American Basketball Association. But the deal itself lives on. And that's what makes it so particularly interesting to many who have learned about it and many who have written about it. The public service adventure involved the authoring of a new high school model for inner city, particularly lower income and minority students. And I'll tell you about how that came to mind and how it came to pass in just a few minutes. The common thread, and the thread that I think that Jim and Damien found interesting when they asked me to speak, was that my motivation and behavior in both dealing with the Spirits transaction and dealing with the educational issue come out of a common ethos that I've decided to call the 4 C's. Creativity, confidence, commitment, and conclusion. Now, we've all heard today some amazingly engaging and entertaining presentations, all involved in some way or another in creative enterprise. And I must say that the creative enterprise that you've heard today and that we find in the arts and in the theater are assuredly more entertaining than the creative enterprise of financiers and lawyers. But nevertheless, we all have creativity within us. And it seems to me, and I urge you to consider the possibility that exercising and discovering your own creativity and engaging it with confidence, engaging it with commitment, and bringing the creative juices, the creative ideas that you feel so strongly about to a successful conclusion is an important thing for your life, and it's an important thing as to the country and to the public weal in general. So I encourage you to apply the 4 C's in your life. Now let me tell you a little bit about the deal, and let me tell you more about the high school and the solutions to educational dilemma that I think that still perseveres in the city and in our country. What happened with the deal was there were 7 teams in the ABA at the time it started to flounder. 4 of the teams secretly decided to negotiate with the NBA, to combine with the NBA, and for various reasons too long to mention in the short time allocated to me this morning, there were 3 teams that were to be left out. The Spirits of St. Louis, which was the team I ran, the Kentucky Colonels, which was run by the governor of Kentucky, John Y. Brown, and the Virginia Squires, who floundered financially prior to the actual combination and were no longer a consideration by the time our deal surfaced. The 4 teams that decided to go into the NBA offered us a cash settlement, as they did to the Kentucky Colonels, and Kentucky took the cash and moved on. I did an analysis of what I thought the future of basketball would be, and myself and my partners felt unbelievably aggrieved to have been left out after suffering the losses we did in supporting a fledgling league and a growing franchise, and tried very hard to get into the league, to get included, but were excluded. And figured that the partnership was worth more than the cash, and if we couldn't be full partners, we would be partners to the future of media, which is something that should resonate with most, if not all of you. I saw the future of media as being fantastic and did an analysis of what that might mean economically over the course of the next 20 years, and did a present value of that income stream that I foresaw in the future, and determined it was worth multiples of that which we were being offered. And we turned it down. And the leagues and the teams tried to complete their combination without taking us into account. And we waited until the very last minute, trying to convince the NBA and the 4 teams to rework their combination and admit the spirits. When they wouldn't, I applied my legal skills and sued to enjoin the combination on various grounds, which I don't need to go into technically today, but basically on the grounds of unfairness. And the court tended to agree. And we ended up with a deal for an extinct franchise, 40 years, an extinct league, the ABA, which still lives. And we have been partners to NBA media revenues and continue to be for the last 40 years and in perpetuity thereon. And it's gotten... You can Google the details. A lot of people have written about it. As far as the high school is concerned, and I wish I had more time, we have a dilemma in our education system, and I recognized that dilemma almost 30 years ago, and decided that one of the reasons that inner city youth were so poorly served in education was that they were not learning in context. They had gigantic schools that were not good communities. There was no context to the 3 R's. So what's it better to do if you're a young person that doesn't know why you're being asked to spend your spare time doing homework and reading and your day in a school trying to learn things that apparently had no use, that you had no use for. So I decided that we needed small schools. I decided that we needed a theme in those schools so that the teachers and the students could be inspired to learn and understand why they were doing it and what the future might portend. In order to have a theme, we needed a private sector partner because teachers are educated to teach, and the private sector learns and knows their theme with great depth. So we brought in, after years, and I'm actually running out of time here, I see on that clock, so I'll rush along before Jim comes and grabs me. What we did was go to the Board of Education. It took about 6 or 7 years of dealing with bureaucracy, commitment, and conclusion to get the Board of Education to say, start a proof of concept, which I did. I brought in the Maxwell School of Syracuse University, which was the leading public administration school in the country, as a private sector partner and started this proof of concept for the new model, the High School for Leadership in Public Service. We've now graduated more than approximately 5,000 students, many or most of which are college-bound. We started this school as a non-region school, hoping to graduate 45 or 50% of the class. The model has been replicated in either the same form or in similar forms, leading all the way up to the charter schools today, graduating hundreds of thousands of kids a year. My challenge to all of you is to apply your creativity not only in your lives and not only in your craft, but to public service. The rewards are tremendous. The needs are even greater. And one last thing, since Alex started and ended with a little bit of a sappy story, I don't mind ending with a sappy story. After the high school had been operating for a couple of years, they needed a library, and I donated the money for them to create a good library in the high school, which they insisted on naming after me. And I asked them to name it the Schupak Family Library, and they invited my parents to come down for a small celebration, which turned out to be a rather large celebration, to my surprise and somewhat to my embarrassment. They presented my mother with 3 dozen long stem roses, and various, I get a little sappy on this part of it myself, so forgive me. There were parents that thanked me, educators who thanked me, and kids who thanked me. And I thank my parents and my grandparents who gave me the standards by which I engaged in this endeavor. And after the ceremony was over, my mother came up to me and said, "This is the proudest day of my life." Now, it's been reported that the Spirits of St. Louis deal so far has been worth in the range of $1 billion. Now, we've never admitted that. We've never denied it either. But one thing I can tell you, if you spent $1 billion and couldn't get your mother to be so proud of you as my mother was of me, you've misspent your money and you've misspent your time.